What I thought was really interesting is when she came to my home, she somehow was able to attack me on every single thing I had been afraid someone would notice. I was afraid somebody would say, your house isn't nice, your furniture isn't nice, this activity isn't good, you're stupid and a bad housekeeper. Like all the things that I'd ever feared someone would think about me all happened in that incident. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. So I thought we'd do something a little bit different today. Usually we're doing pop culture reactions or we're reading a book, but we're waiting for our book to come in the mail, and there's just nothing that's happening in the world right now that I feel super compelled to discuss with you guys. We'll save that for Friday. But today I thought we might just do a little bit of a story hour, because this is a story that I've honestly wanted to tell you guys for a while. I'd love to get your reaction and opinion on this crazy story. But there just was never a time for me to tell it to you. And it's something that happened to me. And it's something that happened to me that was so shocking that it made me scared ever to have people in my house again. Like to invite people over and to host people in my home. And I mean, I think I've mentioned in passing like multiple times that hosting is something that I have to get better at. But this scenario, this story is what filled me with fear. And the whole point of this story is we can get ourselves into a situation, or we can find ourselves in a situation, and it goes so poorly so fast that we then live in the fear of that. And I guess I thought that it would be fun to share the stories that have happened in our lives that logically we know shouldn't matter as much as they do. Yeah, this is like an insane story. But what are the things in your life, and this is this thing in my life, that has affected me to where I'm like, I never want to put myself in that situation again, and then you like just steer clear all the time, even though you know you got to get over it. Okay, this is a story that happened to me 11 years ago, like a long time ago. But even to this day, I can't even believe that it happened. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am not exaggerating even one minutia of the story. It is just that weird of a story. Okay, you guys know that my husband was in the military prior to what he does now. And we were stationed in Germany. And I was early 20s, like maybe 24, 25. And we had one little girl, and we had just had our second baby. We'd only been married for 3 years. We weren't wasting any time. And so I was new to being a wife. I was new to being a mom. And we'd moved 3 times in the 3 years that we'd been married. I hadn't really accumulated the look of what I wanted my home to look like, because it's like with all that moving and then now moving overseas and all of this, my home was like very mishmash. Like most of our furniture and stuff was like stuff that had been given to us by relatives or friends, cast-offs, things we'd like literally found by the side of the road. I still love a good find by the side of the road. But I was still sort of like trying to figure out, how I wanted our home to look, like on our budget, what it could look like. But then also when you have like 2 little kids, sometimes that has to be secondary. Okay. And that's information that you need to have for this story. Okay. So we get to Germany. I'm trying to make friends with the other moms. We didn't live on post. We lived off post, and we were the only Americans in that particular village. So if I wanted to make friends with some of the other American women, I had to make sure that that was a priority. So I started going to like different mom groups and stuff like that. There was this one indoor playground that I went to a lot. There was other moms, and I'd bring my kids there and, try to meet people. I feel like I'm one of the most socially awkward people that God ever created. I don't know why. I think it's because I'm not good at small talk. I can sit down and tell you my whole life story and have no problem with it. But like that little chit-chatty stuff, I freeze. I don't know what to say. But there was this one woman at all of these play dates who was really friendly. And she was, easy to talk to, really warm. She had been living in Germany for a long time. They'd been stationed there originally with the military, but then her husband had gotten out, but now he was a contractor. So now they lived on the economy and they were there like full time. And so she knew all the ways and all the things. And so she really enjoyed that. Honestly, that status of not being the newbie and knowing all the things that she could tell you to do. And, I knew nothing. And so I was happy for somebody who was so openly friendly when I felt like I was kind of like, didn't really know what to say. And so she was kind of like your go-to. Like if you didn't know what to do, then you would go and you could go talk to Jacqueline. Jacqueline's not a real name, but Anyway, you go talk to Jacqueline, and she would tell you all the things that you needed to know, and happily do so. And she was one of these people who was always arranging play dates over at her house and all of this. So Jacqueline invited me and my children over to her house one day for a play date. And being a new mom, and I didn't have any friends back home who had kids yet, and so I hadn't really done a lot of play dates. I mean, I hadn't remembered, like, when I was a kid, like, having play dates where, like, things had been arranged to do, like activities and crafts. But that was the sort of scenario that Jacqueline had set up. She had a whole array of crafts that she had set out, and she'd really planned the play date at her house, like, down to the minute. So I was like, okay, that's what's expected of you. When you are invited to somebody's house, you know, or at least when Jacqueline invites me over, and if I return the favor and have them over, I need to make sure that we have, like, really structured playtime and something specific for the kids to do. It's not like they go off to their room and play dress up or whatever. I was like, okay. And I'm, like, over there, like, taking mental notes, because we just moved so much. I just hadn't had an opportunity. And because my kids were little, I just hadn't had an opportunity to see, like, what was expected of me and my kids and all of this. So we go and we have a nice time. And Jacqueline is just as nice as can be. And, you know, my kids got along with her. And we were actually from the same part of Alabama. And so I was like, you know, this is really cool. You know, this is really nice. This was so easy to make friends with her so quickly. And I was happy to have friends. And she knew lots of people. And so was introducing me to lots of people. So it came time that I was like, okay, I need to return the favor and have Jacqueline and her kids over to our house. And I was trying to think, like, what could we do that would be a fun activity? So I decided that what we would do is I would read them The Little Gingerbread Boy, and then we would decorate gingerbread cookies. That seemed like fun to me. Anything that includes food is fun. So I had made the cookies from scratch, and I had not had an opportunity to make the frosting. And so I had just gotten, like, plain frosting from, like, a jar, and then I put it in, like, little containers and added food coloring and, you know, and gotten all, like, the little candies and all the little things to decorate with. I should also say that this was prior to me realizing that you needed to always ask about people's allergies and preferences. I didn't realize that was part of the children culture, because it hadn't been when I was growing up. And so I just hadn't been around enough people to know that they expect you to make sure that you're catering to their dietary needs. That wasn't something I was aware of at the time. And while that wasn't necessarily something that became an issue per se, I think now I would have done it differently. I think now I would have been like, is this something you would like to do? But I just did it. I just came up with this idea. We'll read the book together and then we'll make the cookies. So they came over, Jacqueline and her children, and she had children like my exact same ages, same gender, everything. So it was a nice little matchup. Everyone had somebody to play with. She comes in, and if you're in the military and you've moved overseas, particularly if you don't want to bring your furniture, or if in our case we didn't even have that much furniture, the government will provide furniture for you in, like, dressers and wardrobes and things like that. They are an eyesore, but they get the job done. It's like this blonde wood. It's all squares and angles. It's like just nothing to write home about. But I wasn't complaining because it was working for me. So she walks into our dining room, and we have this big buffet at one end of the dining room that was government furniture. And she looks around and she says, "Oh, okay." She looked up the light fixture and she said, that is so outdated. Y'all are renting, but you know you could get that changed. You don't have to have that. I mean, it's super, super dated. Do you like that? Is that something you like? And I was like, well, I mean, it's fine. I mean, we're going to be here for 3 years. So I guess I could get it changed if I wanted to. And my landlord wouldn't have a problem with it. He's really nice, but I guess I just hadn't gotten around to it. Like, I literally, of all the things that I had to think about, that was like the least of my worries, honestly. Because I cannot convey to you strongly enough how overwhelmed I was. My husband went from work from before it was light outside, came home after it was dark. He worked tons of weekends. There was all these rotations because what he did there was to work to help train all these other allied militaries. So he was constantly in these war exercises. I mean, he was just never home. Had these two little kids. It was just like a very lonely experience in a lot of ways. So I didn't really care about the light fixture. I was just trying to keep my head above water. But anyway, Jacqueline says, well, okay, just letting you know, you can change that. You don't have to live with that. And then she looked around. She's like, oh, government furniture. I remember when I had to have that. But, does the job, right? I'm like, right. And so already I just felt like she had not even barely gotten into my home when she was already making comments and already letting me know that her environment didn't meet her standard. And I just want to say that, when I went to her house, I wouldn't say that she was like a decorating diva or anything. So I was sort of surprised that she was being so contrary to what she saw. Because I wouldn't say that, well, her house felt more established than mine. It didn't seem like it was so extraordinary that she should feel in the position to judge me. But we went into the living room. And we had like one raggedy couch that we dragged from America and a futon in there. Again, the standards were rather low. But she looks around and she looks at this bookcase that had been set up. Now, on the bookcase, I had displayed my college diploma. And I was excited about it because I graduated with honors, but my original diploma didn't reflect that. So I'd send it back and then they'd send it back to me with the corrections. And I was the only one who was ever at my house, but I like to look at it because I was like proud of it at the time. At the stage that I'm at life now, I have other things that mean more to me. But at the time, with my few accomplishments under my belt, that meant something to me. So I had it up and she goes over and she looks at it and she goes, wow, you actually put this out? I have several degrees and I haven't put mine out. Maybe I should think of that. You guys, at this point I was like, how much longer is she going to stay? But we'd barely begun. At this point, she set her little baby on the ground and he's crawling around and he crawled behind the futon and came out the other side and he was dusty. He wasn't filthy. He just had like some dust on his knees. And she picks him up, dusts him off, looks at me and goes, oh, wow, that is embarrassing for you. Do you ever pull that out and sweep behind it? Between why do you have this light fixture? I guess you have to have this government furniture. Why is your diploma out? And your couch is so dirty behind it. I was just like, I've never been so insulted so repetitively by a machine gun of unkindness as I have been in this moment. And at this point, I was like, let's just get it going, okay? Like, let's just read the book. Let me make your little craft, and then you people need to get the hell out of here. So I was just feeling really stiff and attacked and just like... And the thing is that I don't feel like I'm a generally overly sensitive person. But I think the thing is that I knew that I was at a disadvantage in that my home wasn't like this super warm, beautiful place I wanted it to be. But I just hadn't had a chance to collect what I wanted. But I also felt like I just didn't know very much about like mom culture and like what other moms were expecting of me. So I'd already felt a little stressed out wanting to provide a good time for these people and had just immediately felt attacked. So then I'm like, okay, we're going to sit down. Let's read this book. So I got a kid in front of me and we're doing like library story hour, like, holding up the book and reading it to them. That part was fine. How can you mess that up? She had nothing to say about that, shockingly. And then it was time to move back into the dining room, the place of the hideous government furniture with the heinous light fixture that was just beyond the beyonds ugly. We sit back down. I pass out the plates and I tell them the activity. And I give everybody a cookie and everything. And I put out the frosting. And she says, yeah, my daughter's not going to eat this. She doesn't eat sugar. She's so healthy. She's like the healthiest little girl. Like just naturally, she's just so naturally healthy. And I said, well, that's fine. We're probably not going to eat all of ours either. I just thought it might be fun to do since we read a book about a cookie and how it was decorated. I thought it might be fun to decorate a cookie, but it's just more like a hands-on craft. Don't feel like you have to eat this. And I'm just thinking like, I don't give a damn if you eat it or not. Like, can we just get this done? And so I gave her a cookie too, because I wanted to decorate a cookie. I love decorating cookies. And so like, we're decorating the cookies and she takes a taste of the frosting and she goes, store-bought? It isn't really that hard to make it yourself. Have you ever tried? It's not that hard. And I was like, yes, I have. I know how to make frosting. I know how to make icing. It's the easiest thing in the world. Yes, it's easy. I was just trying to find something that we could do quickly. And since you're not going to eat it anyway, what difference does it make? But I didn't say all that. I just said, yeah, I know it's not hard. And she said, I mean, I forgot how bad store-bought frosting tastes because I never make it. I always make from scratch, but I forgot how bad it tastes. It's really bad, isn't it? I'm like, I don't know. Since you say your child's not going to eat it and the activity is for her, I don't know. I mean, whatever. And then she says, I'm guessing you also use dyes from the commissary, right? Because, the commissary is like the American grocery store on Post. I said, yeah. And she said, oh, don't do that. That is just straight chemicals. You should have gone on the economy to the German grocery store and gotten some of their dyes. It's all natural dyes. And I said, thank you for the information. I would rather use the natural dyes. And she's like, yeah, because see, like, this is just, it's just, there's like no reason to use the dye from the American grocery store. There's just like no reason to do that. And I was like, yeah, I get that. I understand now. Thank you for letting me know where I can go for an alternative. And she kept complaining about the ingredients. And I kept thinking, why do you care? You all are not going to eat this. You've just made like a huge display about how this is not something that you or your daughter are going to eat. Finally, they pack up and they leave. And I was just left being like, what happened? Was I offensive? Was this like a bad activity? Was this a bad idea? But I could not think from start to finish what I could have possibly done to offend her. And I thought about it and I thought, I could sit here and stew about it and feel like this was so unjust and so unfair, or I could talk to her about it and tell her how what she said made me feel, and I, in my vast ignorance, thought that talking to this person and letting them hear my side of the story would make us better friends. I don't know why I thought that would help. But up until this point, there had not been a sense that she was a person who was so insecure she was going to have to make me feel bad. Now, I had sensed insecurity about how she was always talking about her weight. She talked about it constantly. So I knew she did feel insecure about that. And she would talk about how other girls were so small or so tiny or whatever. And I knew that she wanted everyone to know, like, I'm already aware of my weight. So I knew there was insecurity there, but I didn't think that would leach over into how she interacted with me in everything. I guess she just saw that I was clearly a person that could easily be put down because she walked in my home and didn't think it was very visually pleasing. And so maybe that made her feel better, that her house was better or nicer than mine. And so she saw it as an opportunity to let me know, this doesn't look very good. I have no idea. But I thought, I'm not going to just sit here and stew about it. I'm going to be a grown-up and I'm going to go to talk to this person. I'm going to say, when you came into my home and criticized the furniture, criticized the light fixtures, mocked me for having my diploma out, made commentary about how your child crawled behind my couch and came out dusty, and that was like supposed to be a real big embarrassment for me. You went on and on about how you thought the food was inedible, but then you also told me you didn't plan on eating it anyway. I said I had so thought that this was going to be a fun time for us, and instead I felt constantly attacked the entire time. Now, I emailed this to her because I thought, I know that I'm going to get flustered and not say all the things I want to say, and I'll probably word it better if I can just write it down. So I emailed her how I felt. That was a mistake. Because she told me that she emailed back and said that I had been so unkind. She couldn't believe that I had called her a bitch, which I had not. I just want to be very clear, I had not. She couldn't believe that I had, basically called her a bitch, and that she was felt so attacked by my email that she'd broken out in hives, and she hadn't been able to sleep all night because I had been so mean to her. I wish I still had that correspondence so I could read it to you, but really, honestly, who cares that much about it? But I just want to say I tried very hard to be diplomatic in what I said, because my intention wasn't to make her feel bad, but to try to salvage a friendship here. I felt really unnecessarily attacked when I'd been trying to have her in my home, and I thought, there's no reason for our relationship just to be wrecked because of this. Something must have happened to her that day that made her feel defensive. There has to be a reason why she acted that way. Let me tell her how she made me feel, but then ask, are you all right? What happened? how come the last time we were together was fine, but then this time it was just you didn't let an opportunity go to make me feel bad. The relationship was never able to recover because she felt that I had attacked her, and she decided to use my attempt to salvage the friendship as a data point about how hateful I was, and that I had misconstrued the whole thing. And then she began to go around to the community and tell everybody that I was like this really mean person. What I didn't know about Jacqueline, everybody else already knew about Jacqueline. Jacqueline made friends with people and then would just create drama where drama did not exist. And so she went around and tried to turn people against me, but it didn't really work. And I say all this to say that single incident of somebody acting insane, which in my deepest, darkest fears, I had been worried that someone would come into my home and think it wasn't very nice. I was worried that someone would come into my home and feel that I hadn't planned or prepared a good activity and would judge me for it. Every single thing that I had feared would happen came to pass, and then some. It was almost as though she'd been programmed before she came to say everything that I was so deeply afraid someone would say. I've never experienced anything where someone could come into my home and then so cuttingly and surgically attack every aspect that I could have ever feared someone would attack under those circumstances. I never expected that she would criticize the government furniture. We all had government furniture. I never expected that she would criticize the light fixture. It was a rented house. I didn't choose it. I never thought that she would let her child, crawl around behind the couch and then criticize me because I hadn't dusted it before she got there. Or that she would criticize me about my diploma. Or that she would suggest that I was feeding food that was unfit to her and her kid. I mean, it had never occurred to me that someone would say any of those things. And yet, in the deepest part of my heart, I feared that would happen. And then it did happen. I can't be the only person who's had a circumstance happen where your deepest fears actually come to pass, but then you let that scenario reign and rule in your life to such an extent that you let that fear of what happened there convince you that will be what happens every time. For years, I just decided I wasn't having people over to my home. We'd do play dates at parks. I would come up with activities elsewhere. I wouldn't let people come into my home. And my home is a very different place now. I've been married 15 years. We've been settled in one place for a long enough time. I have a home that I'm proud of, that I'm proud to have people at. And I have and even if my home was still full of cast off furniture and side of the street finds, which you will still find things like that. This ladder is from my grandfather, and I love it as a bookshelf. And I mean, my aesthetic is kind of like use what you have, but I like that. I'm no longer feeling like ashamed of that. I like to figure out ways to use what I've got. So it's just not a big deal to me anymore like it was then. But I've let that incident and that person get so into my head that I'm always afraid that though people won't say it, that's what they'll think. That all the things she was willing to say with her mouth are the things that people are thinking in their heads. And so I just always kept people at arm's length and wouldn't let people into my home. It's something I'm working on. I'm trying to get past. Interestingly, and this is for those of you who care about like the spiritual element of things. So if you don't, thank you so much for staying this long. This same person one time told me that she had gotten into some occult stuff when she was in college, and that she now, as a result of it, would often see very different energies around the house. And she told me in a conversation that she would sometimes see dark entities and these light entities racing around her house on the outside, and she would see them through the windows. And what I thought was really interesting is when she came to my home, she somehow was able to attack me on every single thing I had been afraid someone would notice. I was afraid somebody would say, your house isn't nice. Your furniture isn't nice. This activity isn't good. You're stupid and a bad housekeeper. Like all the things that I'd ever feared someone would think about me all happened in that incident. And years later, I thought, isn't it interesting that at a time when spiritually for me, I was at an all-time high with the Lord, like because I was so isolated in Germany, I was so far away from my family. I was at home a lot with like 2 little kids. I was just alone a lot. My prayer life was amazing, and my walk with the Lord was fantastic. And I thought to myself later, isn't it interesting that Jacqueline, who was very much seemingly tied to a different side of things, and I didn't realize this until later, that she would come into my home, and that almost like a spirit of darkness came with her, that somehow knew so specifically where my insecurities lay. And that was early on, like this was probably within the first 6 months of being in Germany. And my spiritual life blossomed in Germany. But I feel a little bit like an arrow was sent out to try to attack me and to make me feel small. And it seems so petty. Like, who cares what somebody thinks about you if you have dust behind your couch? Doesn't everybody? What is it to you if somebody doesn't like the activity you planned? I mean, it was a fine activity. Like, the mature me now knows, who cares? But at the time, I was young and insecure and wanting to please and feeling inadequate in so many ways as a mother, as a wife, and now seemingly as a friend. I couldn't seem to please this person who'd come. And so I feel like at the time, I was just such a ball of insecurities that this person came in and seemed to be speaking utter darkness over my life, like, and condemning me, accusing me. And that accuser made me feel so small that to this day, I still think about that when I have people over. So I guess my challenge for you today is this. What has happened in your life in which an accuser spoke to you and made you feel like what they were saying was the truth when you know full well it's a lie? What logic in your heart are you denying so that you'll believe what the accuser said when you know the accuser was lying to you? And what can you do today so that you act in the knowledge and in the faith that you understand the truth? Like, I understand that I can have somebody in my home and I'm a great host. I don't need to believe what somebody told me 11 years ago, that I was a failure on every conceivable level of hosting. That was a lie. That was that person's problem and that person's insecurity. Where can I go? And what can I do to act in the knowledge that that was an accusation and not a truth? Well, I can have people over. I can open my home as often as I'm able to. And I'm working on that. And it is something. I'm having somebody over this week. There are stories and things that happen to us that are lies, that we're still living under the veil of. And I guess I just wanted to encourage you today, as I'm encouraging myself today, throw off the veil, tear it off, be done with it. That's a thing in the past. It's something that somebody said about you that was so untrue. You knew it then, you know it now. Act in the knowledge of the truth and stop living under the accusation of a lie. All right, I hope that helped. In some ways, it helped me as I think about having somebody over later this week. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.